Thanks for having me. I'm Marc with MISO. Can you hear me? Is that get a little closer? Okay, try to stay as close as I can. And yeah, I did put the freezer pack of Omaha steaks in your trunk, so you're good on that. Um, let's jump into it. So glad to hear that most folks have heard of what an ISO is, Independent System Operator, RTO. We often use that acronym as well. So this is MISO. We're like the air traffic controller for the grid for the 15 states here, and SPP is our neighbor to the west. So that's who you're chatting with today. We make sure the lights stay on behalf of the membership in these 15 states or parts of these 15 states. And it's actually not so unique. Sorry to change that on you, but Missouri is one of several states that is either shared between SPP over here or on the east side of the MISO footprint. There are several states, even Michigan is shared with between MISO and PJM. So it's not so rare to have two RTOs operating in a state. You can see some of the statistics here. I'm not going to dwell on this, but we're serving about 45 million end use consumers throughout our footprint. So what I want to focus on, just a few topics, and the prior presenter spoke about the NERC assessment that came out recently. Several people, I think, raised their hand that they had heard about that. So reliability moving forward is definitely a hot topic for the industry. And NERC made an assessment that included higher levels of risk and in MISO and in other areas of the footprint. That is not something that was a surprise to MISO or its stakeholders. This is what we call the reliability imperative. This has become a framework or a roadmap. The first time I remember my CEO discussing this was in 2015, I believe, or maybe 2016. And the tone of those early conversations were, it's imperative that we focus on reliability, hence the name. And if we don't start doing something now, especially in the area of transmission development, it's going to already be too late because transmission can take 10 plus years to build. So in some of these areas, I'll talk briefly about these areas. In some of these areas, we've got some time, but in other areas, we needed to move real fast. So that's what we've been doing. So at this point, the reliability imperative is both still sounding an alarm, because what we're doing is we're building both the physical infrastructure and the market mechanisms so that our membership can know what to build and build the right stuff. But it's also an element of making sure we continue to communicate the need, because there are pressures to move really fast on transitioning. And we're here to say, here's what's going to happen if we transition the way you're suggesting you might want to transition. So I'll start with transmission evolution. This is what we also call this long-range transmission planning. This is an effort, and this is one of the two topics I've got an additional slide on. This is our effort to build the transmission superhighways that it's going to take to deliver energy from where it's being produced to where the customers are demanding it. And when you think about a renewable fleet, a system of the future that has a lot more renewables, that's going to mean that where the energy is coming from is going to change a lot more frequently than it did yesterday, the yesteryear, or 20 years ago, even today still, where you have a nuclear plant on a lakeshore or a coal plant or a gas plant. And those coal, gas, nuclear plants, they're not moving, right? They're always dependent on to produce the energy. So that's the way the planners built the system. In the future, it could be windy in Missouri, but then tomorrow it might be sunny in Michigan. And then the day after that, some totally different mix. So we're going to need superhighways to carry it around. And long-range transmission planning, transmission evolution, that's what that has been about. And that's what started first in 2015 when we focused on this reliability imperative. That's what we really started with. Market redefinition. This is making sure we have the right market products and the right markets in place. And the reason markets are important is because they provide incentives to our members. If we are creating bad incentives, then our members will not be able to plan to build the right resource mix to bring to the table in order to keep the lights on. So our members are counting on us, and we're working with them to build the right price signals so that we all have confidence that the fleet of resources that gets built are going to be able to keep the lights on. The other two are focused more internally at MISO, system enhancements and operations of the future. The two marry together well in one of the topics that Yasser is going to talk about. I'm not going to steal his thunder, but we could talk. I could take questions on how we're dealing with it. But one of the big elements of that is uncertainty management. That's how we refer to it. Maybe he's probably got a different term for it, but we'll be talking about the same thing. So you've got renewables. You need to make sure you've got the infrastructure in place to deliver them. You need to have the right market incentives so that they can appropriately respond and we can build the right set of resources. But then you got to operate them. And that's where we have increasing uncertainty moving forward because the shade comes over the sun awful fast, and it's not terribly easy to predict. Wind resources change, and it's not, there's uncertainty in predicting wind forecast changes. So that's where those kind of bottom two come together. So this slide is a map of our footprint, a couple maps of our footprint, showing the work that we've been doing on transmission planning. Like I said, back in 2015, our CEO identified that if we don't get moving on this, it might be too late. So over the course of the last 8 years, I hope you can see it from where you are. We have, on the left, you're looking at a map that shows two tranches of what we call long-range transmission projects. We also call them multi-value projects. The way the stakeholder process fits into this one is, by definition in our tariff, multi-value projects have to provide benefits across the footprint. And when we come to our stakeholders with a set of projects, they have to provide benefit across the footprint. We can't just say, we're going to build 15 multi-value projects in Missouri, because Michigan probably isn't going to benefit from those 15 projects in Missouri. So that's why you see it's spread across. In this case, the North and Central, we do have a distinction with MISO South and how we're doing things. So this is two different tranches of projects. The ones that are tranche one are gray. So they probably don't show up quite as well, quite as much. The second tranche is what was approved last December. So those are the green and red. Red is 345 kV. Those are like, 4-lane interstate highways. Green is 765 kV. That's like, you're driving through Atlanta and there's, 5 lanes on each side of the road. So same concept, but just a lot, able to carry a lot more electricity. I like to point out, so one of those projects in gray connects all the way from Iowa up into Michigan, if you see that. So that's a tranche one project that connects all the way from Iowa up into Michigan. Probably one of the longest transmission lines that's being built in the United States in the last 30 or 40 years. A new connection into Michigan, the first in the last 30 or 40 years. And then you layer on top of this the 765, the super highways. What we're trying to do is create two separate highway systems, the super highway and then one below it, to better connect the entire MISO footprint so that we can take that wind energy, because a lot of the wind energy is up in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, and bring it to where the load centers are. That's the point of that. $30 billion in the two tranches, 10 billion in tranche one, and then about 20 billion in tranche 2.1, which was just approved in December. More than just an honorable mention is our work with SPP on what we call JTIQ, Joint Targeted Interconnection Queue projects. This was an effort. There's a lot of wind on this border. If you look at the map on the right, that's the map between MISO and SPP, the border between MISO and SPP. There's a lot of wind located at points across that border, and it was having trouble getting online. It was having trouble getting interconnected because the cost requirements were just too great. So this was an effort to work with MISO and SPP, MISO membership and SPP membership to build a portfolio of projects that would enable wind development across both sides of the border. And that's also fully approved and moving forward. Wrapping up, I don't want to take too much more time. You know, time always flies when you're the one talking. So there's a ton of detail here, and it goes into the question about demand response, and emergency resources. But this is the market side, and this focus is on the planning auction, resource adequacy. In advance, you need to plan the system to make sure you have enough resources built and in the ground in order to keep the lights on. That's what this is about. In almost all of the MISO states, there's a state-led process between the state and the load-serving entity to make sure they build enough resources. The main exception to that is Illinois, as many of you probably know, living right next door to Illinois. So what our market does is it acts as a checking mechanism to make sure that the different utilities have done what they've needed to do, have built the right resource. Our auction, it's actually we're about to post the results on Monday for the upcoming planning year, you know, kind of like fiscal year, which starts June 1st. The results that we're going to post are going to look very different than what we've posted in the past. And we've got a little bit of a timeline here of how we've changed things. First, we changed the construct from an annual construct to a seasonal construct. And that's because some of these resources, moving forward, we're going to need to be focused on 4 peaks instead of 1 peak. The performance of solar in the summer is different than the performance of solar in the winter. Same for wind. So performance is different. We need to track things a little more precisely. So we moved to seasonal. We've already implemented accreditation based on operational performance. So we have 2 tiers of hours. The most important hours are when we're close to having reliability concerns, right? So we have very strict rules around what it means to be the most important hours. We have about 60 to 80 of those per season. And how much you provided or how much you were able to provide during those hours, that's where most of your, what we call accreditation, your value comes from moving forward. The other 20% comes from all the remaining hours of that season. So trying to align how valuable you are to how well you actually performed when we needed you most. The new feature that we're going to see this year that we've never seen before is, we call it a reliability-based demand curve. Kind of complicated to explain, but basically we're enabling a better price structure to be represented. We used to have a curve where if we said the MISO requirement was 100,000 megawatts, then we were willing to spend nothing if there was a 100,001st megawatt available. We were not willing to buy it. But with most things, if they go on sale, you might be tempted to buy more, right? So with reliability, if reliability goes on sale, maybe we should buy some more reliability. So that's what a curve does. The curve moves down. The more that's available, the less you're willing to pay on it, but we might clear more. What that does, though, is it does result in prices that are going to trend higher. They're going to trend more closely to the actual cost of resources. This is going to be a change for us, but moving forward, it's going to be very important to send those signals, because right now we've been sending signals where, well, we don't need anything else. Prices are extremely low because we didn't need that extra megawatt. We don't need anything else, unless the opposite was true. In a few last year here in Missouri, well, we didn't have enough. So the price is really, really, really high. So we're trying to get away from that structure. The last one I'll mention is on demand response. With all of our resources, with demand response, we just filed it this month, and we're hoping to hear from FERC. We're trying to align all of our resources so we treat them similarly. We're treating them all as similarly as possible, with what I said about, if the more available you are when we need you most, the more accreditation you're going to have. Demand response was one that was really a hard conversation with our stakeholders because there are a lot of different ways demand response operates, a lot of characteristics, and then you're also connected directly to the retail customer that doesn't have a contract with MISO. So we're kind of introducing an additional counterparty and the complexities that go along with trying to change the rules for the person that isn't the person that has their finger on the switch able to cut the power. So that's something we hope to have working for us in 2028. That's when we have sought approval. That'll give, some of these rules are going into effect in 2028 so that our customers, our members have time to adapt to them.